Hey folks, I'm Steve Butler. This unique outdoor table certainly has weathered some storms. With a few modifications to the design, we're going to build another one. Come see how we do it here in the garage. All right, let's have a look at today's project. Now this contemporary table is perfect for a dinner for two. This one certainly has seen better days. So we're going to beef it up a little. We're going to change the top. We're using 5/4 pressure treated lumber, and we're adding a few more uprights just to make it a little more sturdy. We're going to tie the whole thing together with some lag bolts and screws. First thing we need to do is cut our pieces to size. All right, let's get started. Yeah, I originally saw this project in a book a very long time ago, and I just liked the way it looked. It kind of reminded me of a Parisian cafe table. Just, perfect for a little intimate dinner for two outside. All right, the first thing we're going to do is cut all of our pieces for the project to length. You want to make sure you're wearing your eye protection, hearing protection, and we're cutting pressure treated lumber. Make sure you're wearing a dust mask. All right, the first thing we're going to do is cut our stretchers for the bench or the seat to 62 inches. All right, the next thing we need are 6 of the seat uprights, and we're going to cut those at 15 inches. Instead of measuring out the next one, I'm just going to use the first one as the template for the other 5. Next, we're going to cut 5 table uprights at 29 inches. All right, now we're going to cut our 2 table gussets to 28 inches long. All right, now we need to cut our 2 seat gussets to 14 inches long. All right, now we're going to cut 4 table gussets to 8 inches long. There we go. We have all our material cut the size that make up our bench, our seat pieces, as well as our table base. Now we're just going to get our 5/4 pressure treated and cut our pieces for the tabletop and our seats. All right, now we're going to cut 5 pieces to 35 inches, and that'll make up our tabletop. All right, now we're going to cut 2 pieces to 16 inches long, and they're going to be our bench seats. All right, there we go. We have all of the pieces that make up this project cut to size. Now I'm just going to go to the bandsaw and purely for aesthetic reasons just shape our table and our seat gussets. Yeah, even though the original design of the table was structurally sound, we added a few uprights, support uprights to the bench just because the original one, it kind of had a little bit of a rocking motion, and when you're enjoying dinner, that was the last thing you needed, was to be startled. All right, let me show you what I did. Now we have 2 gussets which help support our bench seat, and we have 2 gussets that help support our tabletop. And you could leave the end square in these pieces, but just for pure aesthetic reasons, I measured the center and then I drew a line from either end, and I'm going to cut this on the bandsaw and it'll just help lighten it aesthetically. Now I used a colored pencil to draw the line. It's much easier to see this on pressure treated wood than a regular piece. Make sure again you have some hearing protection on, eyeglasses, and definitely wear a dust mask. All right, let's get started. There we go, that looks great. Now we're just going to go ahead and assemble our bench base. All right, the first thing we're going to do is attach our seat uprights to our bench stretchers. Just going to throw on a little bit of glue, and you want to make sure you're using an exterior glue for this. And I'm just going to make sure it's at 90 degrees, just eyeballing it. And I'm just going to throw in a couple of brads, and this just acts as a temporary clamp. We're going to screw these on here, and then we'll put a lag bolt in just to help secure it. All right, going to go ahead and do the other side. All right, now what I want to do is attach the bottom stretcher, and I'm just going to measure up 3 inches. And again, I'm using that color marker. It's just a little easier to see in this pressure treated wood. Okay, I'm just going to throw some glue on. And I'm just going to flush this up to the side. All right, same thing on the other side. All right, now we're just going to take our other board, lay this across, do the same thing on the bottom one, and you can see how it's all coming together. Let's throw on some glue. And again, I'm just eyeballing it. I'm just making sure it's flush on the top and on the side. Throw in some brads. All right, attach our other board. Bring it up to my line. Again, that's 3 inches from the bottom of our upright. All right, attach our other board. Bring it up to my line. Again, that's 3 inches from the bottom of our upright. There we go. You can see how that's coming together. Now, what's different from this one than the first one I made is I'm just adding some extra seat supports. We're just going to lay them over both ends, basically creating a sandwich, and there's a couple of extra ones in there. So again, we're just going to glue and brad nail these all together. Then we'll throw some screws in there and a lag bolt. So again, we're just flushing it up. If you're off a little bit on the ends here, not to worry. This is where you want it to be flush though, because if not, it's going to affect the bench seat when you put that on. All right, first I'm going to pre-drill, and then we're going to go around and throw some deck screws in here. You definitely want to use an exterior type screw for this project. Just do the same thing on this side. Pre-drilling definitely helps. This way you do not risk splitting the wood. All right, let's go get our screws. Now these screws are laying nice and flush. They're going in nicely. If they were proud, you could always countersink. In this case, there's no need to. All right. Just going to flip that over and do the same thing on the other side. Might seem overkill, but this is holding a lot of weight up, a lot of pressure, so you just want to make sure everything is good and tight. There we go. That looks great. Now we're just going to drill a couple of holes and put in our bolts. Okay, I don't like the bolt sticking out too far. You're sitting on this, it could catch the inside of your legs. So what I'm going to do is I drill slight recess with a Forstner bit, and that allows me to put the bolt through, and then the nut just sit inside that recess and not be proud and rub your leg. So we're just going to go right in the center. And I'm just going down the thickness of the bit itself. All right, I went ahead and I took out the Forstner bit and I switched it out for a brad point bit. Just going to drill a hole right in the center of that Forstner bit, and that's where we're going to put our bolt. All right, I'm using my old sawhorses, but if you don't feel good drilling into them, you could always put a backup board behind this, your workpiece. All right, now that those holes are drilled, we just go and put our bolts in. So when you drill your Forstner hole, you want to make sure that it's large enough to accommodate whatever size washer you're using. All right, it's coming together. Now, just going to go ahead and attach our seat gussets. Yeah, it's the perfect size. It fits nicely on a balcony, an apartment balcony, a back deck, or a small patio. You could even bring indoors if you want and make it out of different wood, hardwood, such as walnut or something. All right, just going to put some glue on our gusset. Just a little reinforcement. You don't need a lot. And I'm just eyeballing it, but I want it as centered as I can get. My drill, my brad gun, a couple of brads. There we go. You want to make sure the edge of that is flush with these rails. All right. Same thing, it's going to pre-drill, put a couple of screws in. All right, that looks great. Now, we're just going to attach our seat. Now, I'm just going to screw this on. If you wanted to, you could put some glue, but normally if anything's going to break from people abusing this, it's normally the bench seat. So if it's glued on there, you can't really take it off. If it's just screwed on, you can pop it off and put a new one on and replace it quite easily. So just want to line that up. And I'm just eyeballing this. Now these screws you definitely want below the surface. All right, before I put these in all the way, just want to make sure it's flush with the back. All right, now I'm just going to put a couple in that'll be driven right into that gusset, just to help reinforce it. All right, that looks great. Just going to go over and do the same thing on the other end. Yeah, if you wanted to, you could put a good coat of like spar varnish or Durethane on here just to make it last even longer. But, just leaving it plain with the pressure treated wood is fine as well. All right, let's start assembling our table base. We're doing it exactly the same way we did with our bench base. I have our top uprights all ready, and I'm just going to throw some glue on here. And again, you just want to make sure we're lining up our stretcher 90 degrees. You just want to make sure you're flush. And I'm just going to throw in a couple of brads. And this is just acting as a temporary clamp. Now I'm just going to throw a scrap block in here just to help stabilize it, just to keep it up. Makes it a little easier here for me to line it up. And the same thing on the other side. There's some glue in here. All right, that looks great. Just like before, we're going to throw some screws in there and then drill a hole and put a bolt in there. All right, that looks great. Now we're ready to join the two bases together. All right, let me show you what I did. I went ahead and I drew a line down the center of our bench. And the reason I did that is I needed to attach our upright. And why I have the upright, it gives us a place to attach the table base to. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp our tabletop to our upright, and then that allows me to put in our final stretcher down below. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Yeah, this is a perfect size table for two people, but the nice thing about this project is you can make it larger and sit the family around it. In fact, I was commissioned to make a 4-seater once, so I just used full-length boards and I doubled up on the stretchers, having 4 seats. All right, there we go. We have our bottom stretcher screwed and bolted in place. We attached our base to the upright. Now we're just going to attach our gussets, and then we can put our top on. All right, that looks great. Now we're ready to attach the top. All right, there we go. That looks great. What I did is I picked a pattern, the grain pattern of the boards that I thought looked really nice. And once I got that, I clamped them in place, and then I pre-drilled our top boards and screwed them in place to our side gussets. Yeah, this old table certainly has seen better days. I thought it was a little too beefy looking with the 2x8s for the top, so we used 5/4, which is 1.25 inch thick decking, just to lighten up the top, but it does not affect the stability whatsoever. All right, this looks great. We added our extra uprights to add some strength to the seat. We used some 5/4 decking for our top. I just think it lightens it up a little bit. There we go. Nice table, perfect outside, nice intimate dinner for two. Well, as usual, I had a blast building this project with you. I hope you come back, see us here in the garage.
Just found your number, thought I'd drop you a line. You know I've been out on this road such a long, long time. Just wanted to let you know I'm doing just fine. But hey, I'm doing fine out here on the road. As long as I have friends to call, I'm never alone. Folks wonder how I take all that driving all the time. As long as I have friends to call, I'm doing just fine.
All right, let's start assembling our table base. We're going to go about it. I look down, I don't know what I'm looking at.